WarrCloud.
Welcome. Woo! Welcome to our first hybrid focal point, which is our main speaker for our new monthly programming innovation matrix. We decided to do a restructuring of our programming and combine a lot of our internal programs for our mentor companies with our public-facing events, with the goal of creating opportunities for people to come on the same day, take advantage of the things that that are appropriate for where they are working on their startups, and stick around for our public-facing events, which used to be called Second Thursday, so then had to have a new name since it's the third Tuesday. So decided to stick away, give us a name and a little more flexibility in case we wanted to change the day again. But welcome, and we also are bringing back a popular focus of these public-facing events and what we used to almost always do at Second Thursday, which is the founder's journey conversation. So inviting a founder that can come and talk about their experiences, to share their wisdoms from what they've gone through. So we are really excited tonight to have Jim Roche, who's one of our mentors, but also a serial entrepreneur in the auto tech industry, and has had a number of starts and exits and stops and pivots and done it all, right? And also is currently the founder and CEO of WarrCloud, which is his latest gig. So with that, I am done talking for the night, and I'm gonna sit down and enjoy my seltzer and let Jim take it from here.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody.
We'll come monitor the chat in just a second.
Okay. Anybody got $20 if that's not the last Melissa's going to talk tonight?
You know me too.
I know you too well. Well, it's nice to see everybody, whether it's here or knowing you're out there virtually. That's good.
I stick around because I need to have
Yeah. Nope. I'll use the mouse. Or I can't use the mouse. Can I use the?
You can use the mouse.
I can use the mouse. There we go.
I bet the clicker works now. If you selected the presentation.
Oh, thank you. Very good. So Jim Roche, local guy, not 100% of the time, born in East St. Louis, living now in the city of St. Louis, or over in Lafayette Square. Kind of a quick sort of overview of what's called the highlights. I mean, I've been in tech since the early 80s. Actually went to a little technology school over on the SLU campus called Control Theater. Accelerated 10-month program about hardware and software, and then went to work right out of that for a Bay Area startup called Tricom, which went bankrupt, which is why it's not on this list. But always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial bent. In no particular order, I was with a company called NewGen, running operations. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. After that, I founded a company called AutoPoint, which was the automotive industry's first multi-channel marketing program. We sold that, and then I moved over to a little Silicon Valley startup called Xtime as chief marketing officer. That was a lot of fun. I really hadn't been looking for an exit or a new opportunity. But we sold AutoPoint, and the company that bought it was headquartered in Las Vegas. And if you've been through buy sells, you know that sometimes what happens is that they say, boy, we're really keen, the reason we're buying this company is for the leadership team. And about 3 months after they buy the company, they shoot the leadership team. So I was leaving Las Vegas with all my stuff in the back seat, and I got a call from the founder of Xtime, who said, I heard you're available. And I thought, wow, man, that was pretty good. But Xtime was a fun opportunity. Got out of that, and now I've founded another company called WarrCloud with 2 R's, which is automating warranty processing, which is not quite as boring as it might sound. But that's kind of the highlights of where I started in the entrepreneurial journey. Those are kind of the lily pads, if you will. Oh, almost forgot. I wrote a couple of books along the way. Fast Lane and Fast Break. If you need a cure for insomnia, unless you're a service manager in automotive, those are the books for you. Currently on Amazon, in hardback, and through some bizarre twist of circumstances, got published in Russia last year. I know, right? They called me, go figure. So the highlights here, NewGen, which was essentially a service marketing company for the automotive industry. We founded it in 1994. We IPO'd it in 1999, and then it was acquired by a company called Teletech in 2001. So one public company acquiring another public company. One of the lessons I took out of that was beware of all stock transactions. So we were in play, and on the one hand, we had an offer from Teletech, $18 a share, all stock. On the other hand, we had an offer from a company called Reynolds, $15 a share, all cash. And us being real mathematicians, we went, 18, 15, that's higher. So we took the 18. 6 months after it closed, Teletech stock was below 5. Yeah, that one kind of stung, but lesson learned, right? Usually cash is king. Then I founded AutoPoint. I founded that in 2004. It was acquired by a company called Service Repair Solutions, SRS. That was the company I mentioned based in Las Vegas in 2010. That wound up being a collection of companies. AutoPoint was acquired by a large public company at the time called Solera in 2013. The lesson there was you can find the positive in anything. And that's a real important entrepreneur lesson there, right? Because what had happened is just as AutoPoint was starting to take off around 2008, that recession hit. And it hit the automotive industry particularly hard. That was a real uh-oh moment. But what we realized was that when times get tough, people look to cut expenses, right? And we thought, our initial blush was, we're going to get cut. We'll be one of the expenses. But we quickly retooled our technology so that it moved into other dimensions of marketing and advertising. And then what we said is, look, you can keep us and consolidate your marketing under one vendor and get rid of 3 or 4 other vendors. That's exactly what wound up happening. So we were counter-cyclical to the economy and the recession, which is why we wound up getting acquired by SRS in 2010. Xtime, fun little Silicon Valley startup, got acquired by Cox Automotive. I don't know if you know who Cox Automotive is, but you certainly know who Cox is. That's the cable company, right? That is a 120-year-old, privately held, $20 billion a year behemoth. Among the properties that are in Cox Automotive are Auto Trader, Kelley Blue Book, Manheim. That division is $7.3 billion. And they came along and swallowed little Xtime and put golden handcuffs on everybody. So I'm a startup guy. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And if I ever wondered what it was like on the other side of the hill, spending a couple of years in a 34,000 person company, I like little companies. The lesson out of that, to me, was big and successful does not mean smart. Now, they are big and they are wow successful, right? But looking at how they operated and how they thought just reminded me that, man, there's always opportunity for entrepreneurs. Anywhere you go, these big companies, as they seek efficiencies and they're politically driven, they create niches that an entrepreneur can run into and have a lot of success. So those are some fun things. Oh, by the way, the outcome economics worked like that. So pretty good exits all the way around. There were 1 or 2 failures in there, but the successes far outweighed the failures. By the way, I think anybody who's ever been involved in a startup knows that the founder doesn't get to keep all that, right? But if you keep a meaningful fraction of that, that's not a bad deal. My current venture is called WarrCloud. And WarrCloud, as I said, essentially automates warranty processing. I'm going to take you through it a little bit And why I'm doing that will become apparent in a second. So if you look at the automotive industry, the majority profit driver for any automotive venture is the service department. You know, you go and you buy a car for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, you think, man, these guys must be making bank. The margins, 2021 was an anomaly because nobody could get inventory. The laws of supply and demand blew the prices out of the water. But typically, the margins on buying a new car were about the same or even less than groceries. Razor thin, couldn't make money selling cars. Service is over 50% of your typical dealership's gross profit, despite being only 12% of revenue. And what we noticed is that there are two primary revenue streams in a service department, what's called customer pay and warranty. Customer pay, that's what the growth curve looked like in customer pay pre-pandemic. It was at 2.6, you have an inverted V, and then it dropped to 1.3%, basically flat, right? That was before the pandemic. Of course, during the pandemic, it's actually been negative. Whereas warranty, same years, had grown over 38%. And that was a real moment for us, average growth of about 7.7% per year. And when we took a look, you know, somebody said, well, you know, that's got to be all those airbags, right? You got to replace 100 million airbags. And that wasn't it. What's happening is as transportation is moving down this path toward electric and then autonomous vehicles, and they're putting a ton of technology in the cars, hundreds of sensors, hundreds of onboard computers, and it's expensive and it breaks. And so we predict, I don't have a slide for this, that over the next 5 years, warranty will increase another 34%. So it really is the growth engine of your typical dealership's largest profit driver, which is kind of interesting. By the way, I get challenged on that number, so I finally did some homework. All of the companies that build cars are public companies, right? So if you dig far enough, you can find financials on everything. Well, it turns out that what they have to do when they sell a car is they have to accrue the warranty expense for every car that they sell. So in 2020, when they sold 14% fewer cars than they did in 2019, their projected warranty expense for that year was actually 4% higher than the year before. So don't believe me. They think they're going to break. And the dollars are massive. In North America last year, warranty was about $30 billion. That's what it cost the manufacturers. So we decided that's a problem. And we looked around and didn't see anybody fixing that problem. And that's, from an entrepreneur standpoint, that's kind of my process. I look for a problem, always in business. I'm not a B2C guy, I'm a B2B guy. And we find a problem. Has anybody fixed it? Is anybody working on it? Well, the answer was no. The fundamental problem with warranty, it's analogous to the healthcare claims industry. Now, everybody's had experience with that, right? You go to a doctor, you go to the hospital, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people work on you, and they repair you, right? And they dump all that information on somebody else who had nothing to do with it, whose job it is to go out to the insurance company and try and get paid. Exactly the same thing in the automotive warranty business, except there's no technology. It's all paper-based. So they dump all this paper on some poor person who has to rely on most of the time on memorizing codes and things to try and get that $30 billion paid back to them. It consumes 6.1% of the revenue from warranty, not the gross profit. The revenue is consumed by this laborious process. Totals $1.6 billion a year in expense. So we said, okay, well, that's a problem, and the numbers are big enough. So this is, by the way, this is in 2015. Let's fix that. The high price is because on average there are 1.6 full-time people working at a dealership, and each claim takes about 11 minutes. Those are the things that really drive the thing higher. So we said we got to drive that down. We either got to eliminate the time or we got to eliminate the people expense. We wound up trying to do both. And we built WarrCloud. WarrCloud is essentially a cloud-based platform that ingests all this information, decodes it as a series of AI-driven bots, and submits the information to the factory automatically so that the dealer gets paid faster, quicker, And we charge 2.9% versus the 6.1%, so almost 60% less expensive. And in entrepreneur land, faster, better, quicker is usually a pretty good formula. So we've been having some pretty good fun with WarrCloud so far. Here's one of the things that wasn't that fun. So I said that we had the idea in 2015. Now, my routine in the past has been, we have an idea, we vet it, and then I have a bunch of friends, technology people. I'm not a technologist necessarily. I'm more strategy or marketing, a little bit of operations, definitely not coding. You don't want to let me anywhere near a keyboard to code. But I have brilliant guys I work with who know automotive and its idiosyncrasies. So in 2015, we said, let's do this, and it should take us about a year to build. It took 5 years. I know. So there was a lot of, that's not a lesson learned, but it should be, right? Number one, Jim's terrible at handicapping development projects. But the other thing is, when you look at something and no one's working on it, there's probably a good reason why no one is working on it. Yes, it's coming apart. In this particular case, it is deceptively simple to describe. It's actually horrendously complex to implement a technology solution. But ignorance is sometimes bliss in this particular case. So I kept throwing money in, and 5 years later, 2020, we emerged from the laboratory and said, let's see if anybody thinks this is a good idea. And so we went out, and I've been in the industry for 30 years, went out and called some friends, and they said, as your business friends usually do, yeah, let's give it a try. And we entered the market in the fourth quarter of 2020, and by the end of December, we had 9 customers signed, and we were at 169,000 ARR, right? Humble beginnings, but at least, my God, thank God, we're in the market and we're getting some money coming. Because through these 5 years, I had self-funded most of this. I had anticipated that it would take me, I had anticipated that it would take a year. Maybe more importantly, I told Cheryl it would take a year.
Lesson learned.
Another lesson in that too. But anyway, she's used to me. So that's where we were. And we had 18 members. We really got going in 21. And in no particular order, by the end of 21, we had 70 dealers signed, almost 1.4 million ARR, 41 team members, not a single customer against it. Which, if you think about valuations, is worth at least one more turn when it comes to valuation. And in October, I closed a $3 million seed round. That money is for taking us to the next level, primarily to really beef up the development team, hire a small sales staff, try and mature operationally. And things are going pretty well so far. I've hired a couple of sales guys. Our forecast for January was 4 deals, and they did 16. So if you're a recurring revenue business, if you're going to want to beat 1 month, January is the month to beat, right? So pretty happy about that. 2022, as I said, our use of proceeds are to increase the development team, sales force, all the other usual things. We anticipate that we'll have over 250 customers by the end of 2022. We're going to hire 5 salespeople. We forecast that they will comfortably be able to do 1 a week for a month. That will put us at 4.4 million in revenue, 8.4 million ARR, and we're already looking at potential acquisitions because it turns out there are lots of companies out there, little mom and pops, that do warranty processing outsource. They're just pushing the paper around, right? Instead of somebody doing on a W-2 basis at the dealer, they're doing it on a 1099 basis someplace else, but they're using the same processes. So there's a roll-up opportunity there by tech enabling them that we're pretty excited about. So that's kind of the WarrCloud story and my story. Along the way, I observed a bunch of things. And since we were talking about entrepreneurs, I thought I'd just try not to make the usual observations, at least not all of them. But in my particular instance, I noticed some things I think stand out. One is you got to have vision. And to personalize it, I have always found, look, everybody buys for different reasons. Everybody gets motivated or inspired by different reasons. But in my experience, in the main, why is a lot more important to most of us than what, right? Why is it versus what is it? is why when I talked about WarrCloud, I talked about here's how the industry works. And here's what's happening to the revenue streams. And here's why your expenses get cut. Yeah, we got some really cool cloud-based AI-driven technology, right? But who cares? What problem are you solving? Leadership. I love the complaint. The pessimist complains about the win. The optimist expects to change the leader in terms of sales, right? I know I have met in my time a lot of people who want to be an entrepreneur, but they just want to code. Or they want it to be about product. There's nothing wrong with that. You need product leaders. But at some point in time, a company needs somebody who will lead the people, understand the market, talk to the customers. People smart. You can't do it all by yourself. Oh, thank you.
You want to switch if it
Yeah,
starts to
why
bother
not?
you.
Motivated. Founders are driven. You have to be. Can't have any doubt. You know, I love the old saying, don't stop when you're tired, stop when you're done. Not one that doesn't get talked about a lot. Curiosity. My really good entrepreneurs are curious, not just about technology, but the world around them, the market, their customers, the people who work for them. Curious keeps us moving. As Disney says, it keeps us moving forward, exploring, experimenting. You got to be curious. One of my favorite quotes as well, I used to post this on Facebook, was the cure for boredom is curiosity. There is no cure for curiosity. Adaptability. You know, that's one of the things that ties back to the lessons learned, particularly when we hit the Great Recession. You know, there were people, including people on my board, who thought, you know, we're going to need more money, investor money. Should we just throw it in? Look what's happened to the automotive industry. And, you know, looking at it on the face of it, that would have been maybe from some views a smart thing to do. But we were adaptable. We looked for ways to work around that. You have to be adaptable. You can't be rigid to any one ideology or product. Persistence. You know, I think it was Woodrow Wilson that says, persistence alone is omnipotent. Franklin says that persistence is an energy, conquer all things, and that's really true because there are a lot of lonely nights. There are a lot of times when maybe it doesn't look like you be positive, and that's when you really need to be persistent. And the one that always gets overlooked, at least in my travels, courage. Entrepreneurs are brave, man. You know, it's to hang yourself out there when nobody else believes in you and they think you're crazy, or they look at, you know, the competition or the hill you got to climb. It takes courage. And I salute them. Love entrepreneurs. I tell my team whenever I'm working, I try and instill these things into them. Again, trying not to go for the more common ones, although a couple are unavoidable. Lead from the front. If I at any time doubted that when I worked in the 34,000 person company, boy, was that the lesson. You know, they're headquartered in Atlanta, and everybody in Atlanta knew how everything worked. No matter where you were, you never what happened. There's no substitute for being out there talking to customers, being out in the market, leading your people. Lead from the front. Obviously, take care of your team. They take care of the customers. This one that comes with a lot of years. Seek to understand. It doesn't matter if you're in negotiation, if you have an acrimonious business situation, if it's an employee. The reason someone is behaving or saying something, they have real reasons, right? Try to understand that and get them to understand your position. It's really, really hard. But seeking to understand makes things so much easier when it comes to successful negotiation and harmonious operation of a company and with your customer base. I know common, but I know lots and lots and lots of people who don't have fun at work. They can't wait to get out. I don't get that. I get maybe sometimes you're locked in, but if you're not having fun in the main, life's too short. Always have fun. One of my favorite, this is profound. Nobody buys a drill, they buy a hole in it, right? Nobody buys the glitzy technology because the little light, the shaped light that a fire, it goes from red to yellow to orange, right? Most people buy because they have a problem, you have to solve their problem. Nobody buys a drill. Everybody hates it because I repeat this one so often. In personal and professional, you have to ask yourself, would you rather be right or successful? Now, I know you would rather be both. Everybody would. I'm talking about when there's a clear-cut distinction, and you can't have both. Which one do you pick? To this day, I am astounded at the number of people who say, I want to be right, but you're going to fail. I mean, they can't get there. And if that's you, okay. But you'll be successful more if you ask yourself that question and take the right fork versus the left fork. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, one of my favorites, I think it was Woodrow Wilson. Persistence alone is omnipotent. There's a whole speech that he gave about persistence, about how unrequited genius is almost a proverb. But it comes down to persevere. When you think that it's over, when there's nothing more that can be done, sticking with it. And I have seen, myself included, but other entrepreneurs and startups, the probability of success was tilted by nothing more than perseverance, by sticking it out. So anyway, that's a quick overview. I don't know how we are on time, but we want to leave time for Q&A.
Yeah.
We okay on time?
Yeah, we got 20 minutes, so we're good.
Happy to talk about anything. I'm sure it's a shot.
For you. I
Sure.
spent about 2.5 years in the automotive world in technology and marketing.
Uh-huh.
2012, 2015.
Yeah.
So what you're doing sort of blows my mind because I knew the automotive world at that point when they were still literally uploading daily flat files for inventory management. How has the automotive industry changed or has it related to technology? I don't think this could even have been done when I was working at the time.
So the automotive industry is undergoing more change now simultaneously than it has in 100 years. From a variety of reasons. I mean, you have electrification is one. You have electrification not just in the product and how the product is sold and serviced, but also by the competition, right? The Teslas, the Rivians, all these people who haven't been doing it for 60, 70, 80 years. The pandemic has forced digital retail, and now what we're seeing is real traction on being able to completely buy a car online. I mean, you walk in and you pick up the keys, or if you look at Carvana or some of these guys, they'll come to you. That is remarkable. But on the ground in the main, the automotive industry on the retail side is still those 18,000 in the US, Jim Butler, Weber, right? Boykin Ford. They change slow, and they're still changing incredibly slow. The dealerships now are mostly completely computerized. They mostly have embraced the internet, but it is an incredibly slow moving industry, but the pace seems to be quick. Is there a particular area you want to?
Like I switched over 16 dealerships to a new DMS. And when we were moved to DealerTrack, the concept of APIs was still unheard of in 2013. Like for our website to communicate directly with our inventory was a daily or sometimes an hourly upload and download.
Yeah.
So to do what you're doing with, when you tell me AI and automotive and data, it sort of melts my brain.
So
Compared to where it was before.
it's a fair point, but the AI resides in our cloud. I mean, what we have to do is we use a combination of APIs and mostly RPA. Do you know what RPA is? RPA is, it's not new, but it's really gaining momentum. It stands for robotic process automation, It's essentially a machine taking over and doing repetitive human tasks, but it's using a machine that has actual intelligence behind it versus just doing screen scraping. But we're taking the data out, pulling it into our system, and then doing all the work there. So you were at DealerTrack EMS?
You know, I worked for Travers Auto Group up in North County,
Oh, okay.
and did all of their technology and marketing from a 3 dealership to a 16 dealership plus RV expansion, and having live inventory on 16 websites was impossible. Everything that we were doing in other industries couldn't be done in line.
So, you know, when I was talking about these guys that I've worked with over the years, the developers who take my crazy ideas and make them real, and I said, because they understand the idiosyncrasies of automotive, that's what I mean. Like,
We moved from
multiple databases that don't sync, right? File names that don't match, every crazy ass thing that you could imagine. You left, you're one of the few. Usually when you get in, you never get
Well,
out.
I wasn't an auto, I don't know anything more about selling a car today than I did when I worked there for 3.5 years. But the ecosystem that I built is still in place, and they probably don't want to unwind that.
Probably don't, they
It's a
can't.
pain in the ass to do.
Probably can't otherwise. So you guys might find this interesting. I just leased a new GMC from Bomarito, and the transaction from when I walked in, now I already told them what I wanted, to be fair. I wasn't trading the car, but when I walked in until I left was 52 minutes.
Wow.
It is. The typical transaction time is about 2.5 hours.
No bartering, no.
It's a lease, you know,
Oh,
and
yeah.
to be fair, I mean, we're not in the situation nowadays where you need to try to barter. But behind me, there are 10 other buyers,
Yeah,
right? So they're like, they're not gonna,
Right.
you know? So, but that was a pleasant surprise. And automation was a big driver. Yeah.
While I was sitting here, because I've been in the insurance and financial services business for the last 20+ years, when you start talking warranties and cars, I had already went in my head to this guy's doing insurance. And because essentially that's what you're doing, where you got actuaries coming up with how much it's gonna cost for your premium before you're gonna have a claim or you're gonna have where a person passes away. How often are they keeping up with that? Because you've got where, like you were talking, cars are changing like so rapidly that the cost of, say, 1 year versus the next year, even in a Tesla or something like that, could be vastly different as far as cost of repairs.
Yeah, but what they do is they go through the design phase of the vehicle, depending on the manufacturer, it can be anywhere from a couple of years to 5 years. And part of that is putting it through trials and seeing how often they break, right? In all kinds of conditions. And then they take that data and they extrapolate it out, and that's how they come up with their warranty accruals. So every time they sell a car, they actually accrue what the warranty expenses is going to be. Because they've done all that work in advance. Now, do they adjust those based on new data? Sure. You know, I mean, guarantee you they didn't accrue the Takata airbag. You know, Hyundai last year, Hyundai has a vehicle called the Kona. It's an electric vehicle, right? Now they've sold maybe 40,000 of them, which isn't a lot of cars, right? Last year we sold over 14 million cars, new cars in the US. The Kona battery had a recall, had to be replaced. Almost $1 billion just for that. Yeah, that was a rough road moment for Hyundai. Yeah. You know, so somebody's head rolled because of that. But generally speaking, they try and project all that stuff out before you ever buy it, and then they adjust. Other questions? Should I group out there and virtual now?
We got some congratulations along the way, as you were telling what you've been able to do with WarrCloud.
Oh, thank you.
But I wanted to, not to put you on the spot, but just trying to sort of think, you know, one of the things we preach in our Eureka validation and ideation is to not build until you've got customers, basically, so if you look back on like your process of product build and development, how can you build iterativeness in that? Do you think, because if somebody's listening to your story, they're they're thinking, oh, I should go work 5 years on a technology, and then the market's still gonna wait for me, and that isn't always the situation. So, do you see a point at which you can sort of, what's your MVP, or what was your MVP when you kind of went out there to say, okay, is this got value? Should I continue to build it after year one? And Cheryl's like going, excuse me, what the heck's going on?
So this is one of those, I think, persistence things, because I did have customers.
Okay.
When I thought about it in 2015.
Mhm.
And then after 5 years, most of them are like, I don't think so. So I had to go find new guys who just liked the concept.
Yeah.
We also, along the way, piloted. We had 2 checkpoints with live dealers, didn't have to pay, obviously, who essentially, because they knew me, they agreed to be a laboratory for us
Mhm.
for a little while. And so, you had those checkpoints along the way where you knew. And the other thing is, the slides I put up about why WarrCloud at the beginning, those weren't the industry factors back in 2015. It was completely different.
Right.
So being curious, being aware of what was happening in the industry, essentially allowed us to pivot our story when the product was ready to come out of the lab to what we just talked about here.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
I would never do anything personally. I mean, my process is to be immersed in the industry, to find the problem, and then see if anybody else has solved the problem, right?
And make that a continuous thing over that period of time of checking in and that feedback loop and understanding how the problem might be changing.
Sure.
Which is what I knew about you. I mainly asked the question to protect GB and Emily and those later on, that if we have our Eureka folks in here, they're like, well, I went to Jim Roche's talk, and he just went off and built a product for 5 years and then took it and shopped it around. And so, which I knew wasn't the case. So I just wanted you to share a little bit more of the details.
That I wouldn't recommend doing. And, our part of our growth strategy, just to build on that, since we came into the market in 2021, we know that there are immediate adjacent. So our core market is car dealers, right? Retail automotive dealers. But through conversation, we know that the automotive manufacturers have just as much trouble processing the data they get from the dealers as the dealers do. And to your point, sir, about the extended warranty of the insurance business, that's even worse. So immediate growth adjacencies for us are to move into the OEM side of the processing and extend into extended warranty over time, which is an even bigger market than we're playing in today.
Extended warranty, you've got data, which you're almost the database for the action.
There is a whole untapped area there for analytics, but at 100 dealers, not so much.
Not yet.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
But first mover,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, and then people are driving cars wrong.
That's an astute point. If you look at the actual age of vehicles in the United States, they've been ratcheting up every year over year. The average age of a vehicle now in the United States is just a hair over 13 years, which is unheard of if you go back 10 or 20 years.
Whereas it makes sense to have a warranty if it's affordable.
If it's a reputable company. I mean, I got nothing against extended warranties myself. I just would recommend you go to a tier 1 company like Assurant or a Penske or somebody like that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I want to go back to your slide on entrepreneurial. So I work in healthcare, involved in digital health startup. I was talking to a good friend who I trust, a physician, and hadn't talked to him for a while. And he said, wow, that's really cool. That's really wonderful. Good luck. He said, I just know so many people. I've talked to so many people that have been involved in digital health, and it just they never seem to go anywhere. So of those, where do you think people go astray most? Which of those qualities do you think creates the gaps that prevent folks from pushing through and being successful?
In my experience, the breakdown is almost always with persistence or people skills. A lot of the time, the drive that makes you a great, visionary, it doesn't make you a good company operator or grower. You know, or sales. Well, you might be, your passion, right, and your vision will help you sell some.
Right.
But once you get past that early adopter phase, then you've just got regular people who, yeah, they don't want a fancy drill, they want a hole in a wall, right? But in my experience, that's, I mean, all the others to a slightly less degree.
They're all important, but that's very, thank you.
Yes, sir.
One just sort of comical thing that I thought of when you said a meager start of 169K in ARR with 9 customers. I think all of us would be pretty happy with 9 customers and 169K. But beyond that, I would just ask, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do? What would you do differently?
You know, as the type of personality I am, I almost never confront that question just because it's a waste of time, right? Because I can't change anything. I try to learn, but you know, what would I do different?
So if I can easily shift the question for you,
Yeah.
what is the most important thing that you have learned throughout this process that you would use to make the next startup better?
So I not necessarily related to WarrCloud, but I'll give you one lesson that I pulled forward. When I did AutoPoint, I didn't raise capital fast enough. And that hurt us. That wound up making us much smaller than we could have been. And the reason for that was 2 things. One, the entrepreneur's, biggest fear, dilution. But also, I wasn't that familiar with the fundraising process, and it was, so I approached it from a fear perspective, and that limited us. We could have been a much larger company, and I understood then that it is much better to have a slightly smaller piece of a much larger pie, and I didn't get that. So that was an important one, and that one you can see in WarrCloud. I'm not making that same mistake.
Say that, along with when I talk to people, there's also a fear of like losing control and autonomy when you bring on capital. Did you also experience that, or was it a concern for you?
No, listen, never say never, right? I find that as soon as I say something, then tomorrow I'm like, shit, I wish I would have said that. I try to avoid non-strategic investors, right? Well, I hate the term dumb capital, but if you will, right? People who don't know your industry, people who are just in it for a quick buck. I always look for strategic investors because they understand the business that you're in, they understand the ups and downs. And most importantly, strategic investors bring things to you besides money. They bring strategy, they bring potential customers, they bring partnerships. So once I got that straight in my head, no. I mean, you also have to have chemistry. It's got to be the right kind of chemistry. You got to feel that there's some sense of trust. You got to understand that they're looking out for their best interest and you're looking out for your best interest, but you have a pool of shared interests, right? And that's what you bond over. Now, you also have to be, grown up about the fact that you now have a board. And you have people to answer to, and you're accountable, right? And you're not just accountable to you, right? You're accountable to other people who take their fiduciary obligations very seriously. And if you don't perform, it's in their best interest, and it's usually in your best interest to do something else. And I've had to confront that a little bit before. That's not easy, but you grow through it, right? Those are the learning experiences. It's kind of tried another one of my leadership sayings that I try to tell you never know if I want to do for the last hour is I remind people you never learn anything when you're talking, right? So shut up and listen. And over time, you kind of pull these things together. But anyway, that's my experience. Look for strategic investors if it's at all possible.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Well, you answered one of my questions, but I had another question regarding hiring. I'm terrified of hiring people. I've had some bad experiences. I'm getting better at it. what was your process of finding your key people, especially the early days? Early business?
Yeah, great question. I wish I could tell you I've got it all figured out. It's, I got fooled a couple months ago. You know? But a couple of things. One, and these are little and big things. Carefully read a resume and look to the quality. Now, I looked at one the other day that had like 7 misspellings. Everybody wanted to hire this person. This person doesn't even have the time or the care to QA their resume. What makes you think they're going to quality control their own work? The check references. Try to gauge passion. Talk a lot to somebody. Don't just go down and check the box. Okay, we had 3 20-minute interviews, and you got to get in there. Another one, and this is a really hard one. Go with your gut. If there's something about that person that bugs you that you can't put your finger on it, trust your gut. I personally have developed. I ask 3 questions in every interview, and I give them a little warning. I say, just give me the first answer that pops into your head. This is the last thing that I do. What's your favorite movie? Who's your favorite comedian? Who's your favorite band or song singer? And all of those 2, there's no right or wrong, gives me an insight into the personality of the person that I'm talking to. Right? Now, I asked a guy I was the final interview for an engineering job, and I asked the question. I hope you get, I like a good joke, and I like to have fun. Question, who's your favorite comedian? He said, I don't really like comedy. Oh, you're going to do well here. Great guy, accomplished guy, but would not have been a good fit. So try to get to that point where your gut feels good about a hire. And in addition to all the other stuff you normally do, which is checking off the boxes. Avoid job hoppers. A lot of that nowadays too. I mean, sometimes you can't, or at least ask about it. Yeah. Any other questions?
How do you go from feeling like your startup or the beginning of your company is where you're trying to convince people, like if you have a subscription-based company and you want to bring in people so that they can attract customers, and so you give them a free period. The confidence to say, hey, it's time to start charging. It's a hard transition where you're wanting people to support and believe, but you're actually in it to make money. Finding that transition time, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask you. How do you go from where you have enough support to where you feel like this is the thing that has a platform where people can begin to invest for it?
Sure. Generally speaking, I don't know your specifics, and this is all on on the B2B or the B2C side. And when you're doing a pilot, you got to sort of have a 3-stage expectation, right? Number 1 is let me tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing, and do you agree? And if I bring the solution, let me tell you what it is. Does it sound like a good solution to the problem? If they don't agree, if they don't see that, wrong person. What I'd like to do is give you this thing that solves this problem for free. So I'm setting expectations, right? Use it, get the benefit, and the only thing I ask of you is that you be a testimonial, you be a referral. You let me say what you have to say. But if you see the value, fill in the blank. 3 months after you start to see the value, I'm going to ask you to pay for a little bit. Okay? They're nodding. Great. Then the 3rd stage is if you deliver. Now you have the expectation set and they understand their role. They got a benefit. They were an early adopter. They got a problem solved, and they got it for free for a while. And maybe you say, part of the benefit is I'm only going to charge you half for the 1st year or whatever. Right? But if you don't set those expectations, if those aren't staged properly, then you have this understanding and you wind up with, loss of customer or worse yet, somebody who's going to be negative.
I would just add to that, also just keeping that pipeline of the free users full and not get so focused on, I've got to convert this person that's been using this for free. Just assume from the get-go, you're 10% of those people are going to start paying. And the way to get to what you need it to be revenue-wise is to make the front of the funnel bigger. So you've got, bring more people in. I think we hold on to trying to please those first people, too long, when they may, there's a lot of reasons why they don't stick, and just move on. Give them the time frame, set the expectation, and then keep moving the front of the funnel and to get more people to try it.
And hand in hand with that, of course, is if it's at all possible, it should kind of be quantifiable, right? It can't be subjective of, well, you didn't really, it didn't, I think it's got to be, well, it was this, now it's that. And that's what we agreed to benefit with, if it's at all possible.
All right, well, thank you for your thoughtful questions, and thank you, Jim, for sharing your story. This is great. We will have the recording up on our YouTube channel and pushing it out for those that weren't able to join us either virtually or in person, but there's more forehands out in the hall. Go help yourself. I really highly recommend the mango lemonade seltzer. Thank you, online folks, for sticking with us. We got lots of thank yous and exclamation points. So, and come back in March 15th. The best thing about March 15th is I won't be here, and you guys can watch these people try to make this happen without me.
Oh, wow. What an odd sales pitch. Come back, I won't be here.
So, thanks so much for joining
Oh,
us.
it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This was great. Yeah, did the nose piece just decided to?
Yeah, and then it was, I could feel like something was sticking me in the nose, or like a little horn. You want me to take the zip drive?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get out of and end the meeting because I'm in 2 different Zoom rooms. And
That was fun. Thanks again.
I know.